once invested in a jewel store, but it lost money because someone kept robbing it. Twist. It would... He wished there were more additional pylons. I'll just have a dash, thought Renato. A legendary weapon was exactly what the rebellion needed. They were outnumbered. The once kind emperor had become a tyrant. But his ravens stayed loyal, for he fed them his victims, and the other animals were too frightened to rebel. Renato shuddered at what the emperor was trying to do. To bring back the lost gods, the Black Harvest, the Black Sun? No. He would stop that toad, no matter what the risk. Renato had found his game changer. He would ignore all distractions and focus on the Sky River. Renato was making himself dizzy. Fun! There was an inscription. No spitting. Renato was thrilled. The scientists seemed to think he'd put the Sky Ripper together right. But one toad was worried.
Yeah, Sky Ripper could tear a hole in existence itself. There are invisible strings that tie the universe together. If Sky Ripper cut one, the hole would widen and widen till our whole existence fell into it.
Another toad sighed.
Irving still believes in string theory.
At least go see Calaveras.
Yeah, said the worried toad.
He knows more than anyone else has forgotten about the Transcendent Emperor.
If anyone could tell him how to use this weapon safely, it would be Calaveras. It was he who had told Renato how to find it in the first place. But maybe he had to give up on using it as a weapon. Maybe he had to go to the secret rebel base and ask the generals there what he could do with a weapon that he dared not use. Well, he should have known he'd have to consult Calaveras again. The scientists at the observatory were smart enough. But what did they know of the Transcendent Emperor? He hoped it wouldn't delay him too long. The rebels had scheduled the final battle soon. Every day they delayed risked the exposure of the secret base. And some soldiers were already drifting back to their homes and families. Calaveras would fix the Sky Ripper for him. And then he would win the final battle. Maybe it was the cold, but after a few steps, Renato's optimism started to slump. What if Calaveras couldn't help? Did Renato dare use the Sky Ripper? Oh, he hated that he had chosen this path. It was so much simpler to rescue friends and attack enemies, even if some of those friends were more trouble than his enemies. Some of those enemies had been friends before and might be lovers after. No, okay, it wasn't all that much simpler, no. Physics made his brain hurt. That, at least, he was sure of. What were these poles, exactly? Parking meters from the time of the lost gods? Tried to focus on the now. The ravens who seemed everywhere all the time. Where did they hatch from? Were there giant raven hatcheries somewhere, or did they have families? Ooh, he didn't want to think about raven mummies raising their darling raven chicks. Yeah, Calaveras would help. He would make Renato feel better about using the Sky Ripper. And then Renato wouldn't have to worry about ravens ever again. Renato's paws were getting numb. Calaveras really didn't want company, did he?
do it, said Renato to himself.
The platform used a hybrid propulsion system fueled by anti-gravity and wishful thinking. You never knew where the road would take you, thought Renato. There had to be something useful in these things, didn't there? Going to hurt. Actually, it already did. When I build my castle, thought Renato, all my gates are going to open with buttons, and all the levers will drop rocks on your head. Renato had sacrificed a friend for the Skyrim. It would be worth it if he could bring a super weapon to the rebellion, but the scientists had ruined everything. Calaveras had never let him down.
Better.
But when Renato explained about the strings, Calaveras grew thoughtful.
Oh, strings, you say? Well, the Arcana do speak of the ties that bind the world.
He drew many intricate symbols in the dirt.
Yeah, so, according to my calculations, each time you fire, I'm afraid there's a 1 in 128 chance you'll destroy the universe.
That's pretty good odds. That's like rolling, 21 dice and they all come up 6. What are the odds of that?
What? No! It's more like 2.716s in a row.
Anyway, with those odds, it won't happen if I use it just once.
Yeah, that's not right. Each time you use it... Okay, look, just don't use it ever.
All right, I guess. As he sailed away from the mountains, Renato could see clouds darkening. Rain? No. Ships. Imperial ships, swarming thick as bees. This was it. The big battle. Well, what if he had to use the Sky Ripper? Could he gamble the universe? On the other hand, what were the odds of rolling 21 sixes in a row? The battle was not going spectacularly well. What had the rebels been thinking? They'd been thinking he would bring the Sky Ripper, or the Iblis Stone, or that he'd sideline Zenobia somehow, or turn her. Couldn't he use the Sky Ripper just once? After all, if chances were 1 in 128, that meant he'd for sure be okay the first time. They'd get worse each time he used it, but the first time would be okay, right? He wasn't sure that it was right. So he didn't fire the Sky Ripper. He just brought it along, in case.
Truth was, Renato really liked the sound his sword made in the air.
He hadn't noticed that path before. Once met a pirate captain who used hooks to get around his ship. Oh, what was his name again? Someone had told him the odds didn't change just because you'd had a streak of good luck. His gut told him that was wrong, though. And he always listened to his gut. On the other hand, 128 chances to win. But one of them would destroy the universe. That seemed a bit serious. Maybe he could defeat the Emperor without firing the Sky Ripper. Maybe he could bluff, but with a real weapon. Like in cards, you had 3 knaves, but you pretended you had a fizbin. That could work. It wasn't his fault. They looked so breakable. Bernardo had learned so much about... what was it again? Building these platforms was so expensive, they'd run out of budget for guardrails. He set up the Sky Ripper and let it warm up. He would bluff if he had to. Zenobia came out, flanked by a very daunting platoon of ravens. You won't actually use that, she said in that annoying, I know everything because I'm a cat and you know nothing because you're just a fox voice she had. Or I know the odds. Good, because there's a real chance you could destroy the universe. No, not the first time I use it. The odds are too low. What? No? Yeah, sure. The first time, the odds are practically nothing. They only go up if I use it a bunch more times. No, but that's not how odds work. Didn't you pay attention in class? Now surrender, or I'll use it. Just once, he said. Don't. He felt sure the odds were with him. You have to go with his gut. That's what heroes do. Fire, he said. Please? The Sky Ripper fired. With a tremendous whoosh, the Emperor's flagship went up in flames. It was awesome. Then he noticed there was a hole in the air. A blackness, like a tear in a parchment. Wind was blowing into it, widening it. It grew larger, and even larger. Crates fell upwards into it, and the world itself seemed bent, like the reflection on a curved mirror, as it poured into the ravenous hole. 1 in 128. What are the odds? Thought Bernardo, and then everything fell into the hole and was gone. And just like that, he was alive again, and back on the Farfarer, still fleeing burning Ubar. The book was still open before him. So, the book was a portal. It took you to the future when your destinies would branch. He had failed and died 3 times. But he'd learned another true thing. The core was powerful, but dangerous if used improperly. But he was starting to feel like he was getting the hang of this. There was a way through to victory. He could feel it. He just had to keep running the path of Destinies. With that, the book fluttered back to the beginning, and he fell into it. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Renato knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong, but he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Emperor had brought the Sky Ripper pieces up out of ancient burial by his obscene rituals. Could this be where the Iblis stone was hidden? Someone better get it before he does, thought Renato. And also, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lapino had betrayed the rebellion. But could Renato really leave an old friend to the Ravens? The island was windswept desert. No one went there except ostriches and ostrich hunters. The Iblis stone. It sounded ominous. It sounded powerful. If the Emperor was searching for it, it must be dangerous. And so, Renato went ostrich hunting. Every child could sing verses about the Sky Ripper, but ancient codices held hints of other things. A stone that ate souls, a ruby that drank blood, a jewel only a righteous man could give away. Were all these things the Iblis stone? Long hidden in the buried temple? Another ancient item that was only resurfacing now? Drawn up from the deeps by the Emperor's horrific rituals? It would be fun to try out that one. And here was a handy workbench. The air here tasted bitter. The steps were too tall for a person. The entire place felt restless, like it had been vexed to nightmare under the dust, waiting for its hour to come around at last.
Those flames really bring out your eyes.
Ravens were already here, cawing in frustration. They were still searching for a way in. Good. Then he hadn't come too late. He was practically sure he'd find something useful in one of these things.
day he was getting better and better.
Who leaves these chests everywhere? Wondered Renato. I should send him a thank you note.
He felt like Tarzan.
Renato wondered what would happen if he jumped. Would he be rescued by an emergency platform?
Nothing gets your blood pumping like a bit of killing.
How could a temple to Iblis still even exist? The Transcendent Emperor had destroyed all the shrines of the lost gods after exiling them. Had it been buried in that long-ago battle? Or had Iblis foreseen his fate and hidden it from his enemy? The mysterious sword from the east made you so fast you could catch a fly with your chopsticks. If that's what you really wanted. The rock felt hot in his hand. He could feel its secret power. Sorry, mustache, Lord Renardo. The Ravens, at least, could not get past this point. Obviously, the temple builders knew how to deal with tomb raiders. Renardo hated cannon traps. Also, who reloaded these things anyway? He never figured that part out. It was a stone of the purest blackness. It reflected no light, like a void made solid. Nervous, he picked it up. I can make you mighty. Who said that? It was the stone. Eager, thirsty. That seemed tempting and terribly wrong. Zenobia was the Emperor's greatest general and a potent witch. But they had been close once, and Renardo wasn't sure he really wanted to be Emperor. Why not capture the core of Skyripper instead? It was the eye of a lost god, torn out by the transcendent Emperor to power his greatest weapon.
It's the core,
Said the stone anxiously.
what you want.
The stone bothered him. He hated being told what to do. Wasn't that why he joined the rebellion? Wasn't that why he'd refused to be a soldier? He'd agreed to come on board only if he could freelance. The stone felt a bit clingy. The sage Calaveras had told him where to find the Sky Ripper, a weapon capable of challenging the gods. Even without its armature, the core would still possess great power. He would go there. The moment he landed the Farfarer, Renato had a rare feeling of regret. It's not too late, he thought. He could turn around and sail for Zenobia's island. He frowned. Wait a minute. He didn't want to kill Zenobia, did he? Sure, technically she was the enemy, but they'd been at Swordful School together. They'd never been lovers, but somehow they'd been closer. She'd told him every secret about herself. Except the biggest one. That she was the Emperor's daughter. No. Kill Zenobia, whispered the stone. Before it's too late.
The waterfall was spectacular. You had to enjoy these things as they came. We passed this way but once.
There was something sour in the air. Like the earth had ruptured over something that had been fermenting for a very long time.
You almost never saw wild gogglers together like this. The toads had to train them not to peck each other to death. So these had to be imperial gogglers. That meant ravens were up ahead. Once you try it, you're hooked.
The stone hadn't lied about what it could do for him. With each raven he cut down, he felt a jolt of power flowing into his arm.
You're weak.
Whispered the stone.
The core will kill you.
Are you afraid of it?
Don't be ridiculous.
It chuckled.
But it's unstable. It will poison you so much as carry it. And if you try to use it, it will explode catastrophically.
Renato did not trust rocks that talked in his head. He went onwards.
Of course there was a puzzle. You couldn't expect the Transcendent Emperor to bury a god's eye in a leather sack where anyone could pick it up. You could learn new skills. If only he'd take the time to figure out which. He was more and more extraordinary. Beautifully. Where was a bard when you needed one?
As he approached the core, the stone became hysterical.
No! It's too much power. We'll rip a hole in space and time.
He had a sudden vision of plunging his gauntlet into the core and dying in anguish. That wasn't his vision, was it? The stone had sent him its darkest fears, hadn't it? He had a sudden impulse to do exactly that. He raised his right fist and plunged it into the core. There was a rush of light. He thought he could hear the stone screaming. And then he passed out.
When Ronaldo came to, the core was gone. But the Iblis stone was no longer black, but glowing with a blue light. And it was silent.
"I can't hear you," he sang out, and "You?" It didn't answer. "Ha!" he said.
He had defeated the demonic gem with the power of his mind. He felt invincible. It was time to attack the Imperial outpost on the Nexus. Take the battle to the enemy. But among the huge crystals, there was also an observatory. A wise man would probably ask the scientists exactly what he had first. How wise was he? As the Farfarer made its way toward the Nexus, Bernardo watched sparks fly out of the core. The Iblis stone sucked them in hungrily. You'd think the stone would want this kind of power, wouldn't it? Thought Bernardo. Well, the scientists would explain it all.
This time, Bernardo was sure he'd figured out how to use the core safely.
See? He'd trusted his gut, and it had worked out. That's what it meant to be a hero. To ignore the naysayers and the oddmakers, and do what you knew was right, and have it turn out to be the right thing. Well, he wasn't worried. Once he got to the observatory, the scientist toads could explain it. Then he could carry the war into the enemy's camp and destroy them all. Oh dear, he was getting a little bloodthirsty, wasn't he?
was sort of yanking his own chain, wasn't he?
Somebody had been watching.
Bernardo had never felt better in his life. Normally, a battle would wear him down and he would need a night's sleep. Now he felt like he could go all night and all day. He felt like people were cheering him on, and he could practically hear their applause as he slew one raven after another. Whee! The Iblis Stone and the Sky Ripper Core. Two artifacts from the time of legends. Bernardo was becoming a legendary hero, wasn't he? He had enough power to save the rebellion, but he had to understand this power, so he would not misuse it.
Raven. There were a lot of shiny, smooth, curved with leather, buckles, and kind of smelled, You know what? Never mind. Yes, there was also ore and other useful stuff. Let's focus on that, shall we?
The toads at the observatory measured the stone with their occult devices. I fed it the core of Sky Ripper, explained Renato. No more feed planet souls.
But the core is not an unlimited energy source,
said one toad. Another said,
There's a feedback loop, you see, which could overload the stone. The stone doesn't actually feed on souls,
claimed a third.
but on pain of killing another sentient being. If you can truly be at peace with yourself, it would not overload.
This was all very confusing. At peace? Yes, the mountains were peaceful and quiet, but he now had the power to turn the tides. He should report to the Rebellion Council and prepare for the decisive battle.
One thing he understood from all the toad arguments. Maybe the stone did not feed on blood, or souls, or rage. It fed on empathy. It fed on the pain he felt when he put an end to another being's existence. Even if that other being was a raven intent on killing him. If he could find peace, then he could use the power of the Ibla stone without being taken over by its evil. The mountains. He would go to the mountains. He could find peace there. Unfortunately, the mountains were not empty. There were ravens everywhere. No matter. He had to fight, yes, but he didn't have to be angry. Parry, dodge, slash, and breathe. Yes, focus on the rhythm, the dance of it, not on the blood or the raven's core as they died. Ah, it was working. He wasn't feeling those dark jolts of eldritch energy. He wasn't feeding the Iblis stone.
hoped his hook didn't break.
Good thing Renato didn't have vertigo. I never get tired of doing that, thought Renato. The stone was still silent. His mind was his own, and his heart, too. He bore them no ill will, these ravens. They were doing their job. They were expressing their nature. Dance, whirl, parry, jab, and breathe. It was all so simple, wasn't it? Something was missing. He didn't feel truly at peace. Wait. Wasn't this near where Calaveras lived? The sage would help him figure it all out. Couldn't they have put in an elevator? Or a giant eagle? Or something? Of power. Ooh, you didn't find those every day.
silence by the Sky River's core had given Renato enough power to challenge the Imperial fleet. But what Renato was seeking was inner peace. The rebellion was on the verge of extinction. He would have to wait.
At the end of the mountain path, he found the wise Calaveras in his workshop. "Do you fix souls or only artifacts?" he asked the sage.
Does your soul need fixing?
Asked the sage. "I've been killing a lot of ravens lately," he told the sage.
You're a fox,
Said Calaveras.
and to kill birds is part of your nature. Take joy in it. I mean, I might as well worry about eating flies. Would you like a fly?
It was true. That's what he had forgotten. He was ready for the final battle. The Farfarer cut through the clouds. The air had never felt so sweet since he was a child.
There it was. The dreaded Imperial fleet. He could smell wet hemp ropes ahead, wood and tar, and ravens. Even the fleet smelt good, somehow. He was ready.
He was ready.
Renato had it all squared away in his head.
He would kill the Emperor. Isengrim III had begun well, but he had gone mad. He was trying to invoke the lost gods by means of dark, blasphemous rituals. That was a secret. But the victims had spoken to Renato. The ghosts had spoken. No. No anger. Renato could not afford anger. It was empowering the crystal in his sword. That made him stronger, but it clouded his mind. He would not be a hero. A hero strives. Renato would just be one with everything. The Emperor would die, and the wheel would turn, and all would be restored without rancor, without sorrow, without pain. The road less traveled, thought Renato. How intriguing.
Look down, he thought.
But the more he thought about it, and he had so much more time to think about it now that he was not worrying about the battle, killing the Emperor would not change anything. Another would take his place. Perhaps Zenobia. Perhaps the Speaker of the Rebel Council, and power would corrupt them too, and death would make grief. Grief would lead to hatred. We must lead by example. Reject the violence. Reject the desire to create violence. But how? All coming back to him. He wondered what he'd remember next.
to Earth.
Renato told the corpses. It was something he'd seen in a play once.
Soon he'd confront the Emperor. Funny that this whole war had come about because the Emperor feared death. And now it was coming for him. There was some sort of lesson there, wasn't there? Finally, he came to the Emperor's ship. The path behind him was strewn with dead ravens. The path to enlightenment. His mistake, he realized, was trying to change the world. The world would spin and the wheel would revolve whether he strove against it or not. What he had to do was nothing. He had attained enlightenment. He sat down, adopted a full lotus position, and began to meditate. And all around him, the warriors, they knew. They could feel his enlightenment. They gave up fighting, dropped their weapons, and became his disciples. No, just kidding. The nearest raven stabbed him with a sword and then chopped off his head. I might not have thought this through properly. Thought Renato's head as it rolled around the deck and died. But he'd learned another true thing. The Iblis Stone was evil. It would try to corrupt anyone who used it. There would be a way to win. Renato could feel it. He'd have to explore choices he'd never made before he could figure it all out, though. And with that, the book's pages fluttered to the beginning once again. And he fell. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game-changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Renato knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong, but he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis Stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it. To take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. And also, his old friend Lupino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lupino had betrayed the rebellion. But could Renato really leave an old friend to the Ravens? The island was windswept desert.